So, Ian, should I go for a Brewdog Dead Pony Club, which is a 3.8% sort of hoppy ale, or a flagship Brewdog Punk IPA, which is pretty classic American style IPA at about 5.6?
I'd go with the first one. And I
Start
see you have a bottle opener on your keychain. Is that
Ever
it?
since I left Australia, my friend.
I was going to say, I bet you that comes in super handy for a traveler.
You know, there's a story behind this. So I was visiting a friend in Melbourne in 2009 or 2010. That's really hard. I can never remember. But it was February. I think it was 2010. And at that time, there was this website where you could go on the website and people would, I mean, it's kind of like the original Pokemon app. People would leave that actual physical things around the city of Melbourne where you could go and read the clue on the website and then go down this lane or this street and go 2 steps past the sign or 1 step left and look in the grate and then find something or read another clue. So my friend Kat found this website and was telling me about it. And she said, oh, we got to go down this lane because there's a little hole in the wall where there's a treasure trove. But what you have to do is you have to swap something. So, okay, that sounds weird, but let's go for it. So we had our coffee and then we went looking for this hole in the wall. And to get down there, we find this brick wall. We had to remove a brick and then, sure enough, reach in and there was a little Tupperware lunchbox type thing, only about 6 inches by 4 inches and maybe two inches deep. So just a little tiny lunchbox for a sandwich, basically. Open it up. And there's just all these little trinkets inside, like some cigarettes, some condoms, some napkins, and just random little things. And there was this bottle opener inside. And I said, well, that's actually pretty useful for a keychain. And then Kat said, oh, what can we trade? And all we had was cigarette filters, which is pretty lame for swapping, 6 cigarette filters for a cool keychain. But yeah, that's where I got that. And I've had it with me for over 10 years now.
Wow.
Been around the world twice.
Is that geocaching, they call that? I think there's a term people use, geocaching or something like that here. It's basically the exact same thing that you're describing, where you have these little things hidden in boxes and you can go out in the wilderness or wherever and find them. And yeah, it's kind of like a trade. It's kind of like a time capsule a little bit because you're leaving and trading things, and it's kind of like a treasure hunt. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
I've never come across it again since, but then again, I never had Kat to encourage me to go looking for holes in walls.
That's sweet, man. I love when you got those items that can kick around for 10 years or so, or more. Something that really means something.
Definitely, man. It's good to have a story between the different things that you carry. I mean, all the clothes that I own and that I'm wearing right now, I can pretty much tell you where I've got them from. These ones are actually kind of boring. The ones I've got now are all boring except for the hat. This is from South Korea, but everything else is kind of just down in the town. And I think my brother gave me this shirt. So that's, apart from the hat, everything else is a bit lame. But usually I'll have like a t-shirt from California, underwear from Australia, a belt from London, this kind of thing. So
that's great. Hey man, so one thing I wanted to ask you, or get into at least, was essentially how we met, right? Yeah. Because we lived, I think I was already living in Little Italy on that place on Gray Street, and then I think you came along. Mm-hmm. And boy, was I glad to see another normal person in that house. What a strange place that was.
That was a bizarre place, yeah. I mean, there were some characters. One character in particular who was tough to live with, but the rest were fine. I stayed in the front room, which was really nice. I think you're in the roof. Were you way up in the top? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big house.
Which actually was pretty good too, because the guy who was so tough to live with was on the main floor, so I was the furthest away from him. So that was good.
Yeah. Strange bloke. And there was a guy, Irish guy, who used to love playing hockey in the evening, and he was a character. I think Michael, his name was. Yeah, it was a good time. I was only there for 2 months, but I remember we survived that wicked winter storm that came through. Yeah, that's right. In December, was it just before Christmas?
Yeah, it was like right at Christmas because my flight got canceled on the 23rd, and I had to take the Greyhound bus home.
Did we go for drinks just before that?
I think we did. Yeah.
Because I remember there was some drama, and I was obviously in Toronto for the winter, and my family are all in Australia, and my plan was to go on Christmas Day, I think, on an early bus into the States to see some friends in Rochester. And I think you were stuck, and you and I was the only one in the house, so just you and me were stuck. It was freezing cold. Just survived this weird weather. Did we go down Ossington? Is that the street near sort of Ossington and Queen West? There's some bars down there.
Yeah, I can't remember if we went down Ossington or if we went right in Little Italy there. We might have went to 2 places actually. Might have went to both.
Well, you were the one who was showing me all the places around there, because I'd never really been around that area before in Toronto. I'd normally been further towards sort of Spadina and down King Way and stuff. But yeah, it was nice. It was weird, but it was nice just to have a bit of a chat. And then I think you got on your bus and went straight away. And I had the house to myself for a night, and then went off to the States on the bus the next day.
When I first moved into that place, I didn't know that it was like a house for people kind of coming and going. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know it was such a transient house kind of thing. So I was there for about 6 months. Once I kind of figured out, because I actually used it as like half storage. I basically lived in the area already, needed to move out of my place and find a place fast because I was leaving town for a couple months for a film job. And just needed to store my place at essentially a cheap place close by. It was easy to move my stuff from one place to the other, like in a day. And that's what I did. And then after the couple months after the film gig, I came back and I was like, what the hell is going on around here? And then I got out, and I've been actually here where I am ever since. I was like 5 years ago.
Are you still at Parliament? Is it Parliament Street?
Yeah.
You went out to the southeast downtown?
Cork.
Is that right?
It's called.
Yeah. Is that near the, there's a brewery or something out there?
The distillery district?
The distillery district, that's right, yeah. And that's where they have the Christmas markets, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a nice place.
They charge you to go walk around and look at the Christmas market.
I'm not surprised. That's downtown Toronto for you, man.
Yeah.
Do you know what's a funny story about that house on Grace, though? Is there was a bloke. Were there 2 rooms in the roof where you were, or was it just your room in the roof?
It was just me at the very top. Okay. And then maybe there was someone slightly below me.
Okay. Because I remember coming home one day from work, and in like these transient houses, as you say, you get so much mail for people who used to live there that you don't know who they are. And you're just like, there's like 20 pieces of mail, all these different names. I don't know these people because they haven't quite rearranged their mail addresses yet. And I came home one day and I got the mail and I was like, I know this guy. And it was Ben, the French guy who lived in the house.
Honestly, I don't remember. I only remember you and Ryan, the guy who was the brutal roommate.
Yeah, that was his name. Yeah, but there was this French guy who apparently was living in Grace. You know what? It might have been just before you got there. To be fair, he might have been in your room. I don't know, but you obviously don't remember him, so you mustn't have met him because he's a pretty memorable dude.
Yeah, maybe because I think I was like just moving in. I had a bunch of stuff there, but maybe he was just moving out or something like that.
Yeah,
because I left right away. I just dropped my stuff off and left. I was like, thanks for the storage. That's what it was.
The funny thing about Ben was that we met probably 18 months earlier than when I moved into Grace, and we went and watched the Blue Jays game together and hung out for about 4 or 5 days because we were both at that time traveling around and basing out of a downtown hostel there. And then I just see mail for him and I was like, get on Facebook. It's like, hey, Ben, I mean, we haven't chatted for over a year and that, but I think I've got some mail for you. Did you used to live at this place? He's like, oh, yeah, I used to live there. That's weird. Are you living there? I said, yeah. I said, what a small world. That's ridiculous.
You know what? It was good rent. I remember my rent was only like $600 or something like that. And that was probably, you know, steep or whatever for that top little bunker I had up there, but it was okay. It did whatever it needed to do for me for those couple months. And like I said, I moved into this place. I found this place all of a sudden. I've been here ever since.
So you must like it a lot more.
Oh man, this place has been really good to me here. Super good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they're destroying this place too for condos eventually. That's kind of been hanging over our heads for, I don't know, the past like 2 or 3 years. But at least the property management group is good. So that's actually one bonus. So,
are you in an old warehouse type refit?
Not a warehouse. It's more of like a Victorian duplex, semi-duplex.
Oh, so kind of like Grace, that kind of era of architecture.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a shame they're destroying all that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd probably just keep living here. It's a good location. It's good space. I like it. Got a backyard. Not many people have that, like right downtown, you know, so.
True.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Rent is super fair. So, yeah, I don't know when this is going to happen, but one thing I learned is that when independent people own properties, like the people who own this before the property management group took over didn't do shit. You'd ask them to do something, it would take them forever to get here. And when they do get here, it's just the guy's uncle who's like, okay, I'll screw this and that and whatever. Like, but once the property management group took over, it's like anything you ask for, they're just like, yep, sure, yep, okay, yep, can do that, yeah, like whatever.
Did they start charging you a monthly fee for that?
No.
That's okay, because over in the UK, when you have management companies that take care of like a building where there might be 20 or 30 apartments inside, they start making you pay like 100, 150, 200 pounds a month for the privilege of them taking care of it.
Yeah, that they do that here for condos for sure. And they will do that for their condo, but this is like it's like there's only 2 houses on my street and they're split up into 4 because they're semi-duplexes or whatever. So
I see.
Plus there might be something in the contract as such where it's like, since I was already living here and they bought the contract, they can't go around changing the contract and raising prices and stuff that we already had instilled, you know? So
it's good for you.
They've been pretty good. So, where are you right now? You said in Liverpool?
Yeah, I'm in Liverpool. I'm in a fairly standard terraced area. I think it would be an old working class. Well, you wouldn't call it a village, but part of the city. It's pretty close to the center. I just walk down the hill past the hospital, and I'm bang smack in the middle of downtown. Rent here is also cheap, but that's because of the type of city it is and the part of the country that I'm in as well. There are nicer parts of the city too, but obviously then the price is more. But yeah, it's fine. I like being close to places on foot. Like that's what I liked about living in downtown Toronto as well. I could just walk. Sometimes it was quite a long walk. Like if you walk from the west downtown to east downtown, it's like an hour and a half. Sometimes it's easy. Yeah. But I don't mind it at all. I used to walk from where we were in Grace, right down to sort of Queen and Spadina, or I'd go out to Dundas and Yonge, or like, you know, fairly decent hikes, and I'd just be zigzagging across all the intersections for the most efficient way to just get around, because you know you gotta try and time the green lights and stuff. So I enjoyed it. It's all flat, so it's really easy.
Yeah, that makes me think of a couple things. One is that I used to do that all the time as well. I used to walk from where we lived, West End essentially, to the East End, like I said, an hour and a half. But I got to know the city. It was awesome. You see so much. You literally felt like you were walking through the invisible wall of different pockets of the neighborhoods that you knew, like Little Italy or Greektown or whatever it might be. You're like, you're like, this is where it changed right here.
Yeah.
And then another thing is, I was just going to say another thing is from the movie Copland, how you were saying you were zigzagging. Ray Liotta has some quote. He's like, "That's how you get around the fastest. You beat all the lights, Stallone, you idiot." He's like, "You zigzag."
Yeah, it's definitely true. I mean, that's what I was doing because it was the most efficient way to get around. And I used to discover my favorite streets as well, the ones that are slightly more aesthetic or with nicer architecture or with less cars or you know, less hassle to get around. And I would just like, I like walking down this street. So, you know, there are a few sort of north-south streets, not too far west of Spadina. There's some nice ones around there, like near where we lived. There was some nice streets. So that would be the one I'd take down and then turn left and head east. And yeah, I miss that about Toronto. You know, it's nice to walk around there. People, I mean, it's a North American thing to use a car, isn't it? Especially, you know, when you're outside of cities. But walking, if you can do it, I mean, even in wintertime, I remember coming home once from work and I couldn't feel my toes. And I got inside and I was telling you that, oh, my toes have gone all pins and needly. And you said to me, Allan, that's the first signs of frostbite, man.
Man, I don't know. I don't know what it is too. Like, I loved walking, but I don't do it anymore. Like you said, now I've fallen into the cab zone. Now I'm just like a cab maniac. Everywhere I need to go, I hop in a cab, flag a cab or whatever. But yeah, I used to love walking. Like you said, you find those little streets that just fit your vibe, you know, the ones that you prefer walking down. And yeah, I don't know. It's like an urban explorer kind of thing. Just,
Do you have
I love
more
that
money
aspect.
now? Is that why you're a cab guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel you, man. I feel you.
I know. Yeah. Kind of makes me, what we were talking about, I wanted to ask you about your neighborhood that you live in. You were saying it's great to walk around and stuff like that, but because I had some travel questions here. Like,
sure.
you know, with all your traveling, where do you find had the best beer? And maybe was it even a specific kind of beer that you'll kind of always remember or always search for?
Yeah. The thing about beer, especially these days, is there's just so much variety of beer, you know. When I first started traveling, I remember, because I'm from Australia, right? So you got to remember back in 2007, 2008, 2009, sort of right around the crash time, you know, the global financial crisis. That's when I started my idea of bailing Australia and seeing what else was out in the world. At that time in Australia, we just had like lager, just shit beer, like equivalents of the big brand beers you get in North America. We have the same thing in Australia, and you know, England has the same. You know, they've got, I call it piss beer. It's just boring taste and stuff. So that's sort of all I knew. And I remember when I first started traveling sort of further afield, I was in California in 2009. And I remember being blown away by the variety of beers they had in California. Because to an Australian who was just used to having, you know, 5 or 6 beers that more or less tasted the same. And then I was in California and you'd have like 35 beers on draft with all the colored taps and stuff. And I was just like, these Mexican beer, Californian beer, Canadian beer. Oh, you got some British beer as well. It's, you know, it was pretty phenomenal. But even by the standards of today, those beers would be boring. So as I kept traveling and as the sort of beer revolution took off, probably into 2012, 2013, 14, it's really hard to say now where the best beers are, because I like all different types. So it depends what mood I'm in, or what the weather's like, or how hungover I already am, or, you know, it depends on what I want to drink. To be fair though, I think out of all the countries in the world, Britain do pretty well for having a huge variety of beer at a very reasonable price. Because obviously in North America, you've got the craft scene, which is great. And Britain now have that too. but they've also got their old-fashioned beers as well, which you don't really get pretty much anywhere else in the world. They don't really do them. So for range of product, Britain is really good, and the price is very reasonable. In terms of my favorite beer country, I have to just say is Belgium, for Belgian beers. But they're really, really strong, so you have to be in the right mood to be drinking them. But going to the States, I mean, pretty much everywhere they do nice microbrew beer, so I love going there. Germany's got some good classics. And then, you know, if you want to try particular European countries, like main beer, sometimes you can be pleasantly surprised that that is a very, very tasteful beer, unlike, you know, a Foster's or a Budweiser or a Molson's. I hope I'm not offending anybody, but in my opinion, they're just big factory produced beers, which are fine, but they're not so exciting.
So you said you're from Australia and you've bounced around so much. So how'd you end up in Liverpool? How'd you decide on that?
So when I was living in Canada, when we were living together briefly, I went and lived in Montreal for a bit in 2014. And then I decided that I would go back to the UK. And I used to live in London, but it's just really, really expensive there. So I couldn't justify the quality of life for the type of money you have to outlay for that quality of life. And so I was looking at a few other options, and I came down to two cities. One was Bristol and one was Liverpool, because of the vibe of the place, the connections to major cities, the airports that are there, the fact that it wasn't London. And I chose Liverpool because it's much cheaper than Bristol, and it actually has kind of better connections to the main cities as well. And I realized that it was a good choice in the end because it's quite a cosmopolitan area, especially if you're around the university zones, because of all the students and the academic staff come in, and they can be from all over the place. And there's lots of history here. I mean, the Beatles are from here. I later realized too that Liverpool used to be the second most important city in the British Empire. I didn't know that before I moved here. There's loads of history, loads of cool buildings, and the people are really nice. Once you can understand them, the people are super hilarious, and they're really funny, and they're good fun to hang out with.
The Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, getting back, what about food? What was the best dish? What was the best in all your travels? You must have had something that was just like, oh my.
Yeah.
Something that you still crave. I mean, it must be, I mean, what about sometime even if you're walking somewhere and you get a whiff of something and you're like, oh, this reminds me of that dish that, What about anything like that?
Yeah, I get that with coffee. So if I smell good coffee, I get a weird craving. And you don't get that really in the UK. I miss good coffee. That's something about the UK that they don't really do. They've improved a lot. Yeah, they've improved a lot, especially since probably the last 4 or 5 years. But it's a lot more expensive than Canada and also Australia to buy coffee, especially good coffee. You can get rubbish coffee for cheap, but who wants to drink rubbish coffee? So, like the thing, Ian, with food is that this is going to sound like I'm an arrogant prick, but I'm quite a good cook. So it really has to be pretty phenomenal for me to go, yes, that is quality food.
So did you pick up some of your cooking tips or whatever along the way, that stuff that you infuse for yourself?
I mean,
now?
Yeah, I like cooking. So I'm always curious about recipes and cultural cuisines and combinations of flavors and things. So I'm fairly good at, Italian cooking and Mexican cooking and Thai cooking. And I make a pretty good burger, So I have to be pretty blown away for a dish to really stand out. I was in South Korea last year, and I found a lot of their dishes to be pretty kind of intensely flavorful, and probably because I haven't dabbled that much in that particular cuisine myself, it might sort of make it stand out in my mind of being a dish or some dishes that I can smell them and I'm drawn to them. So they have, I mean, kimchi is pretty bog standard over there, and I had some pretty fancied kimchi's, which I find to have a little taste of, but you can't eat too much because you'll be paying for it the next day, trust me.
Right. What about with all your travels? Did anything ever happen where at some point you thought that you felt you were totally screwed? Like whether it was a near-death experience, your passport got lost or stolen, someone made a false accusation in a country that you couldn't speak the language, so, like anything like that?
I remember I've been fairly lucky, I would say, in terms of not really ever coming much into grief. Like I've never been robbed. I've never, well, I kind of got into a sort of fight once, but I've never really been in a fight. When I kind of got into a sort of fight was just with another crazy Aussie guy who had a chip on his shoulder, so that was just weird. But I remember probably my most sort of awkward experience was I found myself in Manhattan in June, so in the height of summertime one year, and I'd come from Montreal. This is years ago, so 2010 or something like that, and I didn't realize that Manhattan is a busy ass place, and especially in the peak summer season, you need to be organized with booking accommodation and stuff like that. And all my traveling up to that point, even when I was in California the year before in a peak busy season, I was always able to find somewhere to stay. That was not the case in Manhattan. So I was there for about 6 days, and I was actually just about to start a job. So I had to be around New York to start my job because I needed to meet some people in Newark, in Jersey, just there. So you know, I may as well just be in New York. But I basically would find a place to stay each day, and then they would only have one bed for one night, and then the next morning I had to check out. And basically the mission was to go around New York and try find another place to stay for the night. So I was kind of like a proper homeless dude in Manhattan, riding the subway with my backpack, going up and down, you know, from Midtown to downtown and back up past the park and stuff, just trying to find a bed for the night. So it was kind of depressing and left a very sour taste in my mouth about New York City in general, of which I've now removed from my mind, and I can't hold New York accountable for my lack of preparation. So I used to hate New York City and say to all people who like it that no, it's crap. But really, in hindsight, I was crap, and I should go again with better preparation, especially where I'm going to stay for the night, where I'm going to, you know, lay down for the night, and you know, not be a homeless bum next time.
That's great. I was crap. I like that line. What about, where do you find had like the most interesting or maybe nicest people, or maybe even somewhere that you kind of felt like you fit in the most, or you were like, oh, I could see myself here, or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, Canadians are really, really nice. I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to a Canadian, but I've had very, very lovely experiences with Canadians through the traveling I've done across the country there. Sometimes too nice Canadians, especially when they're a bit intoxicated, and they find out you're a foreigner. They can be a little bit too nice. But Canadians are cool. The funny thing, Ian, is if you have a desirable accent and you carry a desirable passport, it seems to work to your favor when you're meeting people from other countries. So being Australian and having this accent is quite a benefit rather than a detriment when you're a traveler, which is something that, you know, I could easily take for granted. So people are generally nice wherever I go. In Germany, I find German people are quite cool, and I do like going to Germany. So that's probably, let's say, the European country that I like, and Canada is, I mean, it's a pretty phenomenal place too. So yeah, they're nice people there.
And what about, how often did bartering and trading, if at all, become a part of survival or just life at any point? Or were you kind of always financially set or comfortable with your situation, maybe before taking off or during, maybe you had odd jobs during, I don't know. I know when I was over there, like bartering and trading was like a huge part of the lifestyle over there that I didn't know was a part of the lifestyle there. It was kind of cool to see that. And I was buying like fake Rolex watches and stuff like that with guys out on the street, bartering with them, feeling all super cool and whatever.
Yeah, I've never done any of that stuff per se. I used to work in a bank, so money is something that I've always been careful with. So I've never really been too sketched out on my finances. I have been very poor at one point, and I remember I used to do this job where I would, basically it's like mystery shopping. So you go into a retailer and you follow a script and you ask them questions, and then you do the trade, and then you fill in a report, and then you get to keep the product or consume the product, and then you get paid like, I mean, an equivalent of maybe $8 Canadian or something like that. So when I was really, really broke and I just arrived in London and I couldn't find any work, I used to do this job, and basically what I was able to do was I would go into McDonald's and KFC, and basically I have to buy a particular meal because that's what the script said, and go through the protocol. And at the end of it, they said, you can of course eat the meal, and then we'll pay you £5, which at that time was probably $7, $8 Canadian. And there's your wage. So I used to walk for an hour, go out at McDonald's. That's my meal for the day. Go back home, fill in a form for half an hour, and then they put £5 in my account. And that's how destitute I was for about 6 weeks when I first arrived in London. That's not bartering per se, but it was
that's not a bad gig for the worst, for like the worst it ever got though. You're like a background actor, and that's I know my buddy did background work sometimes. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but background, if you don't mind being super patient and just bringing a book or whatever, and knowing that you might get used or might not get used, getting paid to be a background actor is a good gig if you don't care. Like if you have no aspirations and you just don't mind sitting there.
Yeah, I mean, I never
passing
thought
your
of
time
that.
some other way, you know?
Yeah, I think you have to be in the right city for that too. Definitely in London and in Liverpool, where I am now, that's doable. And I've actually done some of that work, but that wasn't because I was destitute and poor. It's because I've been interested in doing it and getting on set and having a chance to meet people and, you know, potentially benefit my writing career as well.
Yeah, well, that's actually a good segue to get into the screenwriting stuff. So I know that's what we kind of bonded over when we were both living at that place at Gray Street. We talked about our writing, and we were both working on different things at the time. And I mean, that was how long ago? And we've both been very active since, and even communicating back and forth about what we're up to since. And I mean, so it's not like, I know I've definitely grown as a writer in that time. You know, I'm a pretty good judge of where my work is at. And one thing I find now is every time I finish, I feel like I don't know how to start. Like once I need to start a new project, I don't know where to start again. But once I get going, it's like it all starts coming back to me, kind of thing. And I find solving my problems is getting easier from all the pain and suffering I went through the years of trying to figure out my process and stuff like that.
Definitely. a real craft, and it takes a lot of time and effort to improve, and it's a lifelong and it's a lifelong endeavor. So you never fully can be realized. You have to keep working towards that and improving and getting better and better. And if you can see that within your own work, I think that's a good sign, because it's showing in maturity as well.
Yeah. And I mean, this was a good time. I wrote a script. I wrote an entire TV series actually during the time off there. And I think it was about 170 pages, which was the longest and most in-depth and batshit crazy thing I ever wrote. I'm sure you wrote some stuff, maybe even multiple things with your time off, or?
You mean during the lockdown?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, that was how I kept my sanity, dude. I just, I didn't write a 170 pager or that many pages, but I think I wrote about 4 or 5 projects, and worked on a pitch document for a TV show that I have to still write the pilot for. At that time, there were quite a few organizations that were advertising competitions or just challenges, some based out of Los Angeles, some based out of London. And they obviously knew that in this situation, people are going to be out of work, people are going to be bored, people are going to be depressed. So let's do something for all of our benefit. And I caught them on Twitter, and they were normally about 30-day deadlines or 14-day deadlines. They were quite small projects, and they varied from 10-page, 20-page, 30-page. So not ridiculous page counts, but still quite a lot of work to pull it off. So I wrote a bunch of those, and I also had been working on a feature-length draft since Christmas, which I was sort of halfway through that. So yeah, I was busy. I was really busy, and I think, well, I hope that something can come out of it. Fingers crossed. We'll see.
Yeah, mine was more of an exercise for myself, because I just kind of went balls to the wall, took a huge risk, and essentially made like an anti-hero character that you definitely, I mean, he kind of even slightly, he has an arc for sure, but he's just not a good person. So it's like, I'm okay. And actually I submitted to a couple different fests, and I actually broke it up into 3 parts. And the first part is very good. And that's it's about 40 pages. And I sent it out as a pilot of sorts to a bunch of different fests, and it actually did quite well. And it's loosely based off the Son of Sam serial killer situation. So, and I sent it to a festival in New York called the Big Apple Festival, that I was quite proud that it had finished being like a finalist or semi-finalist there. And I was like, okay, sweet, they get this.
Yeah.
And because winning or placing in writing festivals is so strange and hard, and like you could have a great script and no one could even like it or whatever. Like, so it's just all it's all just a mixed bag. So you kind of got to take those wins where you can get them, kind of thing. But yeah, I kind of went overboard and wrote the full thing and chopped it down into the full thing is I sent out to a bunch of, or not a bunch, but a couple festivals, and no one seems to like it. One, actually, this was a short one. It was one Toronto festival. It was the 40-pager, and one of the reviewers wrote back, "This is the most racist, sexist, something script." And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. It doesn't mean I'm those things. It's like
your protagonist has that view.
Yeah, yeah, and a couple of his friends are like-minded people that he meets along the way. And yeah,
it's tricky now because
I wrote back to the festival and I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, who do you have reviewing this stuff if the person's not mature enough to read content that is taking risks or something like that? It's like, whatever. But I was just,
they have some commentators and some agents or agent type people who are always telling you to be true to your voice, be brave, be bold, be courageous in your writing, and then you are, but providing you're politically correct and maintaining the right narrative, then be brave, be bold, be courageous.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. CDC
yeah.
said the same thing. They took pitch docs during this downtime, and I'm sure they got tons of submissions. And I submitted this one to it. And it says right there, be bold, be crazy. We want to do this risky stuff or whatever. And I'm like, all right, you asked for it. And instead of submitting like something that they probably do think is bold, like a gritty crime drama in the snow, bank robbery, something that might be more in their wheelhouse,
Yeah.
I submit this bold thing and they're like, no, here's your rejection. But
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like everything's subjective. So the person who was giving you those comments obviously didn't like it, and you might have offended their, you know, their personality. And I mean, that's on them though. So it's just a shame that they are the gatekeeper and they rejected you because they didn't like it.
yeah, well, for sure. And that's that was actually the only time that ever happened with the script. Every other festival I sent it to, and I even told them that, I'm like, every other festival I sent this to, either they've even given me like awards, semifinalists or finalists, nominations or whatever like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I kind of knew where it was at, and it's just, yeah. And the perfect thing is that it got to someone, it got under their skin, you know?
Mm.
And
yeah.
that's kind of the whole point, you know?
So that snarky response was the outlier response. It wasn't the consistent response.
Correct. And
well,
it was
good.
also, well, sometimes, well, you know, at these festivals, sometimes you don't get a response. Like this is the way I can best judge my work for the masses of like where I'm at and what I'm doing is paying money to have these people read it at these festivals. That's the only way I'm going to get feedback. So I pay for the slam dance feedback. Sometimes when I have something that I think is worthy, I'll put in the money. And I've sunk so much money into Film Freeway over the years, like thousands and thousands and thousands between my films and between script competitions, because you can't rely on anyone to read your script. Reading a script over and over with all the drafts and all the corrections and all the changes you make, you can't expect friends to do that. You need to pay someone, and this is the best way to do it, is sending it to competitions, kind of thing.
Well, and you hope the people that you're paying to read them are skilled readers as well. But that's not always the case. So that's the annoying thing. You can never know for sure if the reader is a skilled reader or just some derelict person who's come straight out of high school or university. It doesn't really have any life experience. So it's a tricky one.
For sure. And that's what I felt I got with that one review. I felt like it was just like a 20-something-year-old with a wine glass switching back and forth between the Black Lives movement and all the shit going on with the world. And just being, and then look at my script and be like, this is disgusting, and not even understand what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
I don't even understand what's really being said.
Yeah. And also depending on what day it is during the week and what time it is during the day, I mean, being a script reader is hard work too. So sometimes it can be just a factor of timing. You could have been the last script on a Friday night that this person was reading and they just were like not into it. And that's just really, really unlucky for you too, Ian.
It could be anything. Like I've noticed with a lot of this festival submitting, I've kind of learned the ones to maybe stay away from. Because there's sometimes I'm just like, is this even a real festival afterwards or something like that? Or you kind of don't know with some of the online stuff. And it's actually a great scam. If you can pull off a scam and run a festival, you know, like, because there's a lot of people out there who are desperate to have their scripts read and won. And, you know, they'll fork over and be like, yeah, sure. I thought about starting a legit one and just being like, I'll read your scripts and give you notes, because that's actually something I kind of enjoy. But it's at the point where like, I need to charge you because, for one, my notes are going to be decent. They're going to be thoughtful, you know. I'm going to put in the time, kind of thing.
So much time, man. Like, to make a decent living out of that too, you'd have to be charging a lot of money to make your time worth it. So,
yeah, but you'd also have a lot of desperate people who are willing to spend that 25 to $30. There's people who are less talented than me, who are more desperate, who are probably willing to spend and maybe have more money than me, kind of thing.
Yeah, but you're right about certain festivals are sometimes advantageous to your niche or not at all. And I discovered something recently. I submitted quite a dark comedy to an Austin festival because it was cheap, really. It was only like $20 to enter. And I didn't think much would happen. And I got an email from one of the organizers saying that you've been getting really great feedback on this script. The judges love how dark you went in this comedy. Like, the stuff that was happening was dark, and the judges were loving it.
That's
and
good.
I was surprised.
But Austin is a type of place that they probably would.
There you go. So I am aware that Austin is this kind of place, but I didn't strategize that I should send the script there. But in this case, to my advantage, this potentially risky comedy that was really dark was working for me, and people were thinking it was at an elevated level because that was the kind of risk taking, or the kind of pushing the boundaries and the boldness that they were craving. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I mean, like I said before, everything's subjective. So you just got to do what you got to do. And if people don't like it, who cares? If people like it, great. And at the end of the day, whatever you create, Ian, as an artist, the individual is going to interpret it in their own way, and you can't control that.
It's true. And I would even just love to shoot some of this stuff for this thing that I wrote, but even just completing it, going through all the drafts, all the hard work. You mentioned, you had projects 20 and 30 pages. I had a project that was 10 pages that I spent an entire year on working on the script. And it's that stupid Killer Door movie that's kind of like a complete joke, and I spent a year on a silly comedy script to make sure it was tight and right and 10 pages or whatever. So yeah, I just like, it's getting over those, just kind of tackling it, going in that direction of taking a bunch of risky chances and creating this kind of Travis Bickle type character, and just writing a bunch of stuff that I had never written before about like cults and satanic rituals and sacrifices and stuff like that.
Wow.
So, but yeah, there's a lot of graphic stuff in it that it's like I said, it's a crazy script, and it's got a bunch of batshit crazy ideas in it. Because how can you write? How can you write like a script about crazy people and not like go over the edge, with the things that they're doing, and making just people be like, what? This is crazy. Like, this is insanity, like.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, you should definitely send it over. I'll be keen to have a read. And is it a 3-part series? You said the first episode's about 40 pages, so it's about 3 or 4 episodes.
I think it'd be 6 altogether, essentially.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
No, that's right. 40 odd pages, 170. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, the first part is essentially about like the main character and him it's called Down the Rabbit Hole. So it's him essentially following who he is before and all that, and then how he falls into with this group. The second part is essentially being within the group and growth within the group, but it also introduces the detective side of who's following the group. And then the third part is the previous 2 groups plus the news media group on top of that, kind of completing it. So it's kind of like a police procedural, news media, and then you got the bad guys and the serial killers and everything too. So
nice.
And I try and do good things. I try for there to be redeeming moments and things like that, and funny things and witty lines. But
great.
And often with this stuff, like I feel like if you just had the budget to make it and do it, and sometimes you'd realize like, damn, this is great, or people might love this and whatever. But you never know unless it happens.
See, exactly, mate. It's a tricky thing, especially when things cost so much money to make. You have to. I mean, that's what producers are always battling with. Like, all these projects to make. We only have this much money. Which projects are we going to make, and are they going to turn a profit? I can see it from a business perspective as well.
Of course, like the business side makes sense to me. That's why I always went out and made my own films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's just what you have to do, kind of thing. If you just want to make a movie but I think at the time when we met, you were strictly writing, but since you've been lucky to, like, you've been having a lot of success with it. Like, you've been meeting up with producers and doing a lot of networking, and people have they been buying your scripts off you, or just collaborating to turn them into films and kind of helping you birth them to an extent? Is that kind of the trade-off?
I mean, every every project's different. So, you understand the deal, Ian, like me, that you can have so many projects that will just sit on your laptop, and that's great in itself. You've written something, but it hasn't been realized on screen, because that is a whole nother mission in itself, and that's always the end goal. But it's not easy to do that. So since I left Canada, I started finding lots of nice networking opportunities in Liverpool, because that's where I was based. And through those, I managed to find directors and producers and various, skilled people in sound or in DOP or even art design, graphic design, set design, all kinds of skills. And from that, I was able to get a couple of projects produced, which wasn't easy either. It was really hard. And then there have been other projects as well. I mean, I started collaborating with an Italian writer, and we've put together a TV project, and we had an agent come on and help us with that. But even then, it doesn't mean anything's going to happen, because the world is so competitive and the industry is so competitive. And like we were saying before, people have to like what you have. But even if it's the best thing that's ever been written, I mean, you still have to have the producer like it and want to invest in it, because everyone has an opinion. So I had a TV show pilot and concept that I created with my colleague Magda in Rome, and we've been trying to move that forward for about a year now. Obviously, COVID has really screwed that over too. And the best and worst thing that happened with that project was that I actually contacted Warner Brothers about this concept and got a response from them that basically said, yeah, it's good, but we've already got a similar project on the slate. So it's like, we knew it was on to something, but someone else is doing the same thing. And why would a producer have two projects that are the same on the slate? Because they're just going to compete with each other. So that was,
who's their competing studio? You should go approach their competing studio. Be like, hey, we should make one just like it, but different. Mine.
Yeah.
One thing that you said, and it is so hard, you need to essentially convince that your script has to be so good to convince someone to be as passionate about it as you are. And that's the toughest thing, because who's going to care about your project as much or more than you to make, almost more than you to get it made.
Yeah, well, that's where the pitching skill comes in. And that's another thing altogether. You can be a good writer, but you can be a shit pitcher. And unless you've got an agent, which you probably wouldn't have, because it's really hard to get an agent as well, unless you pitch yourself to get an agent. You'll have about 50 projects on your laptop, and you'll be dirt broke and probably still living at your mum's house. But you're still a good writer. You're just not going to be getting paid for it. So, and there can be people who are good at pitching and selling an idea, but they're a shit writer. So, it's two things you need to be really skilled at.
And we both submitted to the Blacklist, right?
Yeah,
the writing festival, or not festival, or sorts of in LA.
Like the database thing, yeah.
Have you seen Thunder Road by Jim Cummings? It's kind of an indie. I think it won Sundance or Slam Dance this year or last year.
Is it released
an indie
this year?
film? Yeah. It's about a cop trying to get his Thunder Road.
Thunder Road. Let me write it down.
I think it's on Netflix. But anyway, so he did a talk on like a film YouTube thing that I like called Behind the Curtain. And this guy does really good interviews, and he had him on. And he said his script got a 3 out of 10 on the Blacklist. And he couldn't sell it anywhere. Everyone's like, yeah, but you need a star and all this stuff. And then after it won, best film at Sundance, but also everyone was telling him how great the script was. So it's just kind of interesting, like it's exactly what we're saying, just how tough it is to something. Sometimes you just have to do something, prove it to yourself and everyone else that it is great. And And he said his thing was he realized he didn't know how to write something on a page to make it pop out the way it needed to for someone to understand what he was trying to say.
Yeah, and also the people who are being paid to review on the blacklist are just people as well. And like that time you submitted to the festival and the guy was like, I don't like it. You know, that can happen to somebody who you're paying to read your script on the blacklist, and they could be like, don't like it, and I think it's crap. That's their opinion, even though they could be a fairly skilled reader or an experienced reader, but they just didn't vibe with it because it's a subjective medium.
Yeah, so it's just this person, this random person who kind of controls your fate.
The gatekeepers, man. So it's a tough, it's really hard. You know, I mean, the thing is, the thing with this industry is you can be the best at this gig and yet not be successful. Whereas in lots of other, like if you're in different professions, if you get your tickets, get your experience, you get your qualifications, you're in. And you are this successful person. Whereas with writing, it's not like that.
No.
And with filmmaking, it's not like that because you have to do what you do and people have to vibe with it for it to be successful.
Well, the interesting thing about that is this so successful movie, he said he got a 3 out of 10 and all these negative reviews on Blacklist. And I said, I think, didn't me and you both get a 5 out of 10 for our scripts, which I just found funny. And, you know, so it just goes to show that, you never know. Like,
I submitted a particular script twice. It's obviously 2 different readers, and I got 5s and 6s. You know how there's 4 or 5 different categories that they score you
I
in?
actually really like that.
Yeah. So I got 5s and 6s, but
what were the categories that we can maybe tell people? It was like character, story, dialogue. Themes maybe. But I remember dialogue was always my highest rated.
That's good because dialogue's hard to do. So kudos to you, Ian. Like writing good dialogue is really tricky. But then obviously
I take pride in it kind of because of my acting background. Just the stuff that I learned as an actor. And then after doing all that, and that's one thing that Tarantino says, you think as an actor, you kind of think, and oftentimes I'll say the words out loud as I'm writing. I'm like, does that sound right? Or does this sound right? What sounds more natural? What sounds real? You know? And I'm always boiling it down. And I think even Paul Schrader said something like shorter is better. So I always just go with whatever the shortest thing is.
Yeah. The dialogue is tricky. But obviously it's only one of the elements to get across the line. You've got to be maximizing in all the different categories. But going back to the blacklist as well, Ian, like there's been some blacklist winners who have then been able to make the film and the film's bombed, you know? Right. So, I mean, you can't explain it. I mean, sometimes it's just a factor of timing as well, you know?
The thing is, you can explain it. And if there was, that's why I think there's a saying where like, if they knew how to do it, they do it every time. If they knew how to make a movie a success, they do it every time. That's why there's no formula. There's too many factors involved.
Yeah, just good. As long as you're enjoying it, that's the main thing. Because I mean, it would be probably a bigger hell to be getting paid a salary to work on a TV show that you hate. You know, if you're writing something you like and you're enjoying it, maybe you're not getting paid as much money for it or nothing, but you're enjoying it. Is that more valuable to you than getting paid a salary to work on some TV show you want to, you know, shoot yourself in the eye over? So.
You know, and that's true. And I think that's really the thing is writing is just a passion for me, which is nice. And it was a passion that I wanted to get better at. And as I got along, I was like, well, I can't keep asking all these people to read it. Festivals was just like a learning curve, essentially, for that passion. And then if anything good came from it, great. Your website, man, and your podcast. Tell me about, I checked out the website, I got it up here. Is the website pretty fresh, pretty new?
It has been updated very recently, but it's been.
I was gonna say, you got your films on there.
Yeah. Well, the films have been on there for a year or two. The actual website's been in existence for two and a bit.
Tinderized. I'm pretty sure it's in pre-production, but I'm pretty sure. Didn't I read this script? Didn't you have a dating? Is this maybe a different script, or I knew you had a dating script before?
Yeah. very possibly you've read that, or a version of that. There's about there's about 3 versions that came out of the drafting process of various lengths. But there's a production version which is slightly longer than the other versions I wrote. I have a director that I work with in Liverpool, very, very talented guy, very, very busy guy as well, because he has a very busy day job. He basically is head creator at a film company anyway, and he sometimes is just holding the company afloat and all the different projects that got going on, lots of corporate commercial stuff. So he's so busy. So it's really tricky to do something on the side, obviously micro budget. And he obviously doesn't have the time to produce. So we tried to find producers to get that off the ground, and that was challenging in itself. And we were moving forward and then moving back, then moving forward and then moving back. And then, 2020 came around, COVID hit, and now it's still in pre-production. So
yeah,
we'll see. But this is how it goes sometimes. So it did well at some festivals as a script, which encouraged the team to have more confidence and faith in the story, because it was getting well reviewed in London, and it's got a result coming up in Portland, Oregon soon as well.
My stuff always did well in Oregon. I don't know why. They love me in Oregon. That's what we always used to jokingly say. They love us in Oregon.
Did you send the most recent one with your anti-hero?
I did. I sent them the full length version, the 170
and did they like it?
I haven't heard back yet. I haven't heard back, so maybe we're in the same festival.
This one is it's actually, well, maybe it's the same festival, but they had so many different categories, and the Tinderized one is in. For the first time I ever saw this category, it was a comedy horror category. So it's in there.
That's the last. I've seen a couple of those, because the last film I made was like a dark comedy. It was a horror spoof. It had horror. It wasn't really a horror. It really wasn't blood or anything, but kind of.
Yeah.
But we might be in the same one. It did have a lot of categories. I think I might be in a dark drama or whatever. That.
Yeah, it sounds right, because this one had dark version of the regular genres, and then I
was like, well, get ready.
Be prepared. Yeah. So we'll see. I think the results are coming out in the next month. So we'll obviously let each other know how it goes on. But it's intriguing to see how it goes. So
I'll just be happy if someone reads it. I don't even know if they'll read it. I thought, like, every time I'm like, it's 107. Are these people even going to read it? They're just going to be like, ugh. First page, last page. Yeah, I get the gist.
Yeah, that's the thing with such a long script. It's especially, again, like I was saying, on a Friday afternoon when they are ready for the weekend, they just the script comes on the table.
Okay, everyone.
You're just like, oh man,
read this Bible.
But if you're seeing it from their point of view, you can understand why they're going to not really put the effort.
They get so much garbage.
Yeah.
So much garbage.
It's a timing thing, man. So the website's there, and now I've obviously added a few extra tabs on there because I've started making a podcast. So that's the newest addition to my website. Yeah.
One thing, just before we hop into that, just to let people know, this was super eye-opening to me as well. I had one festival. It might have been this Austin comedy one, when I wrote a comedy script for it. And they actually told me how many other people were in the festival. And they were like, from 650 scripts, we've boiled you down. You're in the top 100 or something. And I was just like, that was the first time I ever got a feedback about how many people are actually, I kind of had an idea. I knew a lot of people were submitting, but even just this kind of small indie little side hustle or whatever, side festival that's not like known by everyone, was getting 650 submissions. Imagine what Sundance and all these, so I was just like proud of myself for one.
Yeah.
You're in the top 100 of 650 submissions. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's only happened to me once as well, Ian. I think it might have been Final Draft or one of these bigger ones, but they sent out a congratulations that on this occasion it said out of 6,973 or something like that. you're in the top 1,000 scripts, congratulations.
Yeah.
But I didn't get any more from that. So obviously I didn't get any further, but it's just nice feedback to sort of know, you know, percentile based where you are sort of fitting with, you know, the rest of the pool. So if you've been really, really working on something for so many hours and you've got a feedback of like, you're in the top echelons of the pool, he's like, oh, right, I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
And it's an encouraging feedback to continue improving and keep going.
That's all I really need, because it's not like I'm expecting to win. I don't know if you even are when you're submitting to these things. I'm just kind of looking for some sort of angle of feedback or realm of my progress and growth. And it's a pretty small fee to pay to kind of figure that out, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just nice to have the feedback to spur you on to know that what the effort you're putting in is paying off.
For sure. Because, man, I don't know what your writing process is like. Well, you'll have to tell me. Mine is essentially, I wake up super early in the morning. Once I decide, I can't write if I'm working or like have a job or anything. So me writing during the time off during COVID was the first time I wrote in a long time. But it was great because my process is kind of just diving in, only being a writer for like a month. Waking up at 6 or whatever in the morning, super excited to write, and write pretty much until 6 p.m. at night until I just can't think anymore that day. And then essentially from 6 p.m. that night, once I'm not in front of my computer, I'm meditating on the next day, making notes on my phone. So I have a pre-planned thing to wake up and start working on the next morning, because I actually find I do the best writing in the morning when I'm just kind of spewing, because I know with all the rewrites, I'm going to have to fix it later and it's going to go through so many drafts. So I've gotten past the point of being so precious and caring and just go, get it all out and clean it up later. That's kind of my process. But I found I was up for 15, 16 hours a day, sometimes writing, and that was all I was doing for like a month straight.
It's great. It's really great, man. And that's why you got your 170 page beast written. So kudos to you, man. Yeah, I mean, building a writing routine is important, I think. And like you said, discovering what hours of the day work best for you. I found you would think writers would be nighttime people, and some are, but I found that most writers are morning writers, or at least the successful ones, I think, have steered more towards morning writers than night owl writers, which I don't know if there's any science in that or not.
Jon Favreau, one little thing I heard from Jon Favreau, he said, and I find this is kind of the reason why it works for me. He says, when you wake up in the morning, your brain is still kind of foggy and still developing, and you haven't got all the influence from social media, TV, the news, your life experience. Your eyes and mind and ears haven't taken everything in for the day. All you have is kind of your foggy, dreamlike state for those first 3 hours or whatever it is, where all you have is exactly all that creative juice. Just get it out in the morning. Well, it's all kind of fresh there and it hasn't been infected by anything.
Yeah, there's a bloke I had the privilege to be on Zoom conferencing with during the lockdown. He's a South African bloke, but he lives in Wales now. And he was saying he wakes up at 4 a.m. and does writing till about 10. So that's 6 hours of writing. That's it. And then his day is his day after that. He does his chores and he's got kids and, you know, a wife, and he just does his day, but he gets his writing done. 6 hours is, if it's productive, that's quality, man. And yeah, he's a successful writer. So I'm not saying everybody should wake up at 4 a.m., but you need to figure out what times work for you and commit to scheduling it in, you know, and otherwise you'll never get it done. I mean, there's a woman in LA who says, you know, commit to at least 10 minutes, do it in your coffee break, just do something every day and then progress forward from there. So, yeah.
And those little tricks are for the people who really fall into that. Oh, I got writer's block, or all these little like do 10 minutes. Oh, it's just 10 minutes of workout a day. People don't realize how disciplined you need to be for yourself to become a writer. You know, you have to sit down and put hours and hours, and it's not fun. Is it fun for me to comb through the material that I've written over and over and over again to try and make it better and better and better, cut a word Like you go from top to bottom in that 170-page script. I probably went through it 50 or 60 times, top to bottom, probably more, changing little words here and there, just changing. And then you figure out story. You're like, oh, I'll change this. Oh, well, that changes the whole friggin' story, or changes. Now I got to change this, this, and this because I like this idea too much to not do it. So that's the fun. That's the roller coaster of it all. But it is time and effort and
I changed the character's gender once. So I had to go through the whole script changing he to she or him to her.
I've been there too.
So funny, man.
So tell me about the podcast. We'll talk about your podcast. We both started podcasts roughly around the same time.
I know, isn't that bizarre? It's like sometimes I guess you're just operating on a similar energy, or you know, we're both similar types of people, similar ages, you know, similar passions, and we were both experiencing a similar stupid situation in 2020, and this was just something that came from that. So basically, so obviously I was working on my stuff, had been the same for the last 4 or 5 years, working on, you know, I think I had about 3 or 4 projects at the same time, but you're probably the same, Ian. You've got different scripts, short, long, in the middle, and you're working on them at various stages. You know, you're in just thinking about it, or you're in the first draft, or maybe you've got another one you're doing a 4th draft on, or whatever. So I was at that time, at the start of 2020, I was working on a new feature since Christmas. I was working on a new TV comedy idea, and obviously I was collaborating with my Italian writer on a pilot and concept as well. So there was 3 main projects, and then I've always got little short scripts I just write just for exercise, really, just to keep the ability to just bash out some, you know, a 5-pager or a 10-pager or whatever. Lockdown came, super weird time. And I was supposed to go to a huge writing conference in April in London, which obviously was canned because of COVID. Fortunately, that because these guys are absolute legends, they turned the festival into an online month-long festival, all over Zoom and Facebook and a certain app that they developed and all this kind of stuff. So a whole month of my lockdown time was taken to sitting in on sort of webinars and lectures and group Zooms and breakout room Zoom sort of chat sessions and stuff like that. It was really, really great. And the things that they were saying within that, I'll give them a shout out. They called the London Screenwriters Festival. That's the name of the organization. And during that time, I sort of got the feeling that the environment of which we operate in now because of COVID is going to change the industry. And some people from Israel and people from Africa and people from the States and Australia and all over the place were saying that, yeah, it's going to change. It's going to be different and you have to embrace it. And a lot of people were saying that finding new media is going to be possibly more lucrative than you might have thought. So there was one particular lady, I think she's based in Israel. She was saying that you don't have to necessarily write a script and then get it performed in LA in a massive studio. You could turn it into like an audio book and do the sound, get some guy to do the sound for you, have somebody, you know, say the narrative, get some voice actors to do the dialogue and stuff. And this is going to be a product and it's doable. So from that, I then just became inspired to create a podcast because it's a media. It could be interesting to some people and it's going to be fun. And it's going to be a way for me to be able to release content when all the responsibility is on me, rather than having to find the right network of people and the right team to get stuff made. So there's all these combinations of things which came to me realizing the podcast, The Nostalgic Vagabond. So I got a guy to do the sound. I got an artist to do my title card. I asked loads of people I've met all over the world to contribute, and I've just started doing episodes. Number 4 will drop tonight for you, but tomorrow for the rest of the world on the other side of the Atlantic. And then I've got another dozen or so lined up, ready to drop, and I think I've got episodes all the way up to Christmas. So it's happening, and it's a lot of fun, and hopefully people will enjoy it.
For sure. And I'm going to put a little title graphic, something on the screen there for your website and where they can find Nostalgic Vagabond podcast. And you're exactly right. I mean, it's kind of all the stars just kind of aligned, like you said, about new media, and we're in control of this content. We own the content. I've got a composer working on my new theme song right now, which is super cool. I'm excited about. You own the content, and it's just so easy to make stuff nowadays. And I was never really a fan of this because I was, and I still wish I could tackle the short film and the feature film and the television series game. But right now, this is a good way of just expelling other interests and things like that. And it's got pretty low overhead. You just need a camera, a mic, and you do some fun things like hiring someone to do a graphic, and all of a sudden you got your own logo and brand.
Yeah, man.
And music. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the world is screaming for content right now because the studios closed over lockdown all over the world. I don't know if it's the same in Canada, but in Britain, all of the major soap operas were closed. So they were worried about whether they'd be able to continue having content to release at the same rate that they were doing before COVID. And obviously the BBC studios closed, the other studios that were filming. I mean, I was supposed to work on a movie in March, and that stopped, and I haven't heard anything about whether that's going to come back again. So what does that mean? Are they going to cancel it, postpone it? When's it going to come out? So there's going to be a period of time where there's going to be less content, and then this is when people are going to be hungry for podcasts and hungry for other media that they might not have thought of before.
Well, actually, it's funny you say that, because during this time, I kind of stepped away from all the movies and everything available to me at this time. And I was looking for new media, and I did fall into watching a couple podcasts, and it did inspire me. I was like, oh, maybe I wanted to start my own kind of thing. So there is, and I do know that there's a backlog on productions. There's a backlog on productions that were just about to start up for some of them, and some of them who can't get their insurance and can't get their things together, and they're just preparing for 2021 instead. I'm lucky enough right now in Canada, and a lot of other people are too. And I've been lucky enough. I've been back at work working on a production for almost 8 weeks. So that's quite a while. Things are good in Canada and Toronto so far. And for our production, the lucky thing was we had our insurance and stuff in place before it went down. So we were one of the lucky ones, but I could just as easily be sitting here in the same boat being like, I don't know when we're going back. And actually we just hired a guy last week who's like, yeah, I'm supposed to be on something going back in September, but I don't know what's happening. So I just thought I'd jump on with you guys, kind of thing.
People got to eat, man.
Yeah. So, but it is kind of, are you doing strictly audio podcast?
Yeah. For now, my podcast is strictly audio. It's old school. I'm not saying that in the future it won't go video too, but for now, at least for the first series, it's going to be strictly audio. But I'll be interested to hear from you, Ian, just, later on when we'll be emailing each other what your opinions are on the whole Zoom video thing, because I'm curious about it, because obviously you're in Toronto and I'm in Liverpool. We can't sit in a studio like Joe Rogan in LA, sit opposite each other and have cameras, all set up and having the best tech. This is what we do at the moment because it's what's possible. I'm just curious to know how you will find the Zoom video and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so far so good. I would say Zoom is definitely my preference. I started with FaceTime. I did with one guest with a friend, and we talked for like an hour and a half before really testing it. And then after, the audio didn't work through FaceTime. I was like,
No.
So then I did Zoom, and that has been working pretty flawless since. And they actually give you the audio and the video recording separate if you want. So I can record, it records just the audio file, which I love for that. If I did want to do, I haven't done just the audio podcast thing. The thing I like about video for some reason is just podcast is I like the video podcast for some reason. I like to see people, even if they're just sitting in a chair. I like to see their facial expressions when they're saying something and get the full experience kind of thing. So that's kind of why I went down that road.
Already, Ian, I've had some of my listeners sort of inquire about doing video, and they've just said, I like to put a face to the voice. And I totally get it. But just for now, I'm just old school, because I also think I would like people to listen while they're driving, and you don't want a video going while you're driving. If they're doing a run or a walk, just to be a voice in your ear. You're not going to look at a screen while you're walking or running. So yeah, I'm at the moment, that's sort of where I'm at, but who's to say that in the future I might go video too. For sure.
And I could just as easily do the audio thing too. I kind of like having that, but I haven't. I've just only done the video because, and our needs are totally separate in that regard, where I'm not necessarily looking for people driving and walking. I'm looking for the people kind of like me who are who are using it strictly as kind of a video platform as well, kind of thing. So, but that's kind of cool about all of them. They all have their different needs and uses. And what is yours? Yours is about all your travels and everything along the way.
Yeah. So the premise of the Nostalgic Vagabond is it's inspired out of COVID. It's inspired out of the situation in 2020. And because I am a traveler, and I've sort of been living out of a backpack for years, the situation kind of has put a stop to that for the foreseeable, hence the Nostalgic Vagabond. So what I'm doing, at least for the premise of the first series, is I'm getting in touch with people I know, people I've met from my travels from all over the world, touching base with them, seeing where they're at, and just sharing some stories. Sometimes the stories of how we met each other, wherever that was, at what time, what their kind of travel journey has been like since. I've discovered some people have continued to travel and get even more extreme with their traveling and more adventurous, and other people have sort of more settled down, or their traveling's sort of changed since we met because they've gotten older, or things like that. We have conversations about what travel might be like in the future, and the types of precautions that we might have to take, and just like reminisce and have a good time and tell stories. And that's basically it. So yeah, there'll be episodes like that coming up all the way to Christmas. And yeah, people from all over the place: Australia, Canada, the States, Mexico, Britain, Germany, Ireland, Italy. I mean, all over the place. So yeah, stay tuned for that.
Cool. Well, man, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on and catching up and chatting. And I'll add little promos where people can see your stuff here at the end and check it out. And if you just want to stick around after I sign off here, and we'll have a little chat before you go. But is there anything left you want to say to everyone before we sign off?
Yeah, Ian, thanks for having me, man. It's been really great to catch up. And yeah, it's been, just trying to think, years since we spoke, even though we're speaking virtually now. But yeah, it's years since we spoke. It's just good to see you doing all right and doing your thing and keeping moving forward, and good to catch up. And yeah, I wish you all the success with your things too. And let's just give good karma and kudos to each other and see you on the other side.